Honey Sound Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Bilko Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, Epcot Center, the opening celebration.
Let's do it. Yeah, I think I know where this is going. So Epcot is the brainchild of Sir Walter Disney. I guess he conceived of it shortly after Disneyland premiered in '55, and he did Disneyland, and he's like, wow, this is great. I want to build something grander that goes beyond just the Disney content, just goes beyond the movies, goes beyond the theme park. And he wanted to create an actual city, a city of the future, and they eventually dubbed it
Epcot, spelled E-P-C-O-T, experimental, prototype, community of tomorrow.
And he wanted to shine this city like the beacon of hope for all the world to come, industry, people live there, work there, do their entire lives in this Epcot, and shy away from the whole theme parky aspect of it that we know today. Correct. And I want to say they officially unveiled it to the world just before Disney's death in 1966.
And now, here is Walt Disney.
Welcome to a little bit of Florida here in California.
It wasn't, I don't think, was supposed to be any sort of themed city. It was supposed to be a city without much theming behind it, but it was supposed to be a place where companies could either put their corporate headquarters or have industrial centers that create products of the future and actually put it in people's homes who are living there, test it out. It was supposed to be a grand city of the future where all these futuristic products can be developed and, put in people's homes, put in people's hands of the people that live there so they can actually try it out. But it was supposed to be a real functional city. They were also going to put a Disneyland in that city for like the theme park entertainment zone of it. That's what the Magic Kingdom ultimately was phase one of the grand Epcot plan. And actually Disney World as we know it today is technically Epcot. The whole thing is the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Now, it obviously evolved into more of a theme parky, touristy thing, because he was the Elon Musk of its time. Well, I think Disney, obviously he was born in like 1901, so you think of what he experienced growing up and all the changes through the tail end of the Industrial Revolution. You saw the rise of automobiles, you saw the rise of modern electric technology. Obviously, there was no computers or anything, but television, all these fantastic inventions came to be. And I think that really influenced him to really want to continue on to say, hey, what's next? What's next? What's next? And I think through his empire that became the Disney Corporation in the 50s, he accomplished movies. There was no question that, he was like the head cheese in Hollywood. He's done that. Then he got into the whole touristy theme park aspect of it, and he blew it out of the park with Disneyland. No one ever did that before. That was like the first theme park as we know today. And I think he almost got bored with that, and he was like, okay, what's next? Oh, I'm going to make these grand plans to make the city of the future. It's going to be a model for the entire world to, model their cities after. Because you think of things like the monorail. He put the monorail in Disneyland in 59? And he saw that as an awesome invention. He was like touring Germany, I think. And he's like, because he put in like a little train that went around, not the one we know today that goes around the whole park, but he had like a little train that it was like the half-size trains. You probably know what that looks like. But he had that going around in Disneyland, and he was touring Germany, and he saw a demo of the monorail, and he's like, well, that's what I want. I want that thing because that's the future. That's the future of transportation. So he tore out that little train that he had going around Disneyland and put in the monorail the next year. And it was supposed to be a showcase of a futuristic mode of transportation. And it was America's first monorail. That's what they keep saying it, touting it as. And that he wanted to showcase that as an actual practical mode of transportation to to be used. And I think that kind of sparked ideas of, okay, this is a transportation system. How can we extrapolate that into a whole city of that kind of technology, of all this new stuff that's coming around the corner? Again, this was the 50s and 60s, so you got to put yourself in the context of where this was back then. And, and one thing led to another, and all of a sudden, you look at Epcot of the original plans, the monorail was the central component of it.
And all these varied activities around the Disney World will be tied together by a high-speed, rapid transit system running almost the full length of the property.
You had monorails running from north to south that would carry people throughout the city, and then you had what we know today is the people mover would sparse out and create these wheelhouses within the major hub centers that would move people in and out of the city, and it was his idea to alleviate traffic by having all these people movers and monorails take you everywhere. Yeah, so there were, from what I recall, there are like 3 major centers. There's the entertainment district all the way in the north section. That's where the Magic Kingdom is today. And when they built the Magic Kingdom, that was phase 1 of the original plan of Epcot. So you had Magic Kingdom up top with all the entertainment and hotels and stuff like that. Then you take the monorail south to about the midsection, and that's where the main city part was. And that's where you had like these massive skyscraper in the middle. And then that's where it was built out in a circle from there, where you get to the less dense suburban type of centers. But it was all like this hub and spoke spherical center of a city. And in the middle, like I said, you had this big skyscraper where you had all these commercial districts, restaurants, shops, that kind of stuff. And then you go out from the city center, and that's where all like the homes are and stuff like that. Then you go south of there, again on the monorail line. Now they also had a major highway going through it as well. But if you go south of there, that's where the industrial district was.
Monorail trains carry employees either to the theme park or to Epcot's 1,000-acre industrial park.
And it was kind of built in the same way, where you'd have these like spherical epicenter in the middle, where you had these like high skyscrapers, and then as you go farther and farther out, you get less dense.
This industrial complex will provide employment for many people who live in Epcot. But it will mean much more, not only for this community, but also for American industry. Here, the Disney staff will work with individual companies to create a showcase of industry at work. In attractive park-like settings, the 6 million people who visit Disney World each year will look behind the scenes at experimental prototype plants, research and development laboratories, and computer centers for major corporations.
So that's how it was kind of arranged, was you had an industrial zone in the southern part, you had your commercial residential in the middle, and then your entertainment stuff at the top. Yep. Right, well, if I could touch on that, and I'll even go one step farther, what if nobody comes? Like, you talk about worker strikes and stuff. What if there are no workers? What if there's nobody there? And I think Epcot as a conceptual idea is nice on paper, but it's completely impractical and was doomed to fail since day one. When you look at the practicality of it, because again, what is Epcot supposed to be? It's supposed to be the city of the future, where you're supposed to have all these industrial centers develop modern products and showcase it to the workers.
Their homes will be built in ways that permit ease of change, so that new products may continuously be demonstrated. Their schools will welcome new ideas, so that everyone who grows up in Epcot will have skills in pace with today's world. Epcot will be a working community with employment for all. And everyone who lives here will have a responsibility to help keep this community an exciting, living blueprint of the future.
Well, what happens, and you saw this with the theme park version of Epcot too, what happens 5 years down the road when everything needs to be replaced because it's all out of date now and it's all so-so, Are you going to just tear everything apart and start again and rebuild these people's lives? Like, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, who pays for this? Is it your stuff? Like, the whole question of the replacement. Yeah, it's great in the initial phase, but what happens again when things need to be replaced? And to your point of ownership, like, is this just like a commune where it's communism rules all and nobody owns nothing? And I think that's almost what doomed it to beginning, and why it was dumbed down to the theme park version, because again, Disney World as we know it, the whole twice the size of Manhattan acreage, is Epcot. that was always meant to be Epcot. And Magic Kingdom, when they first put that in 71, that was phase 1 of what eventually would have been a whole city. But they never got there because I think they had struggle getting corporations to buy into this idea. Because again, who's funding all of this? Like there is an astronomical amount of cost involved with keeping something like that going. And especially when everything's being replaced because it's supposed to be the city of the future, like nobody was signing on from the beginning. And I think they just lost all their funding. And then when Disney died, it just all fell apart because nobody wanted to do it then. And to your point, it's like you have to own everything for it to work. And it did not obviously become the vision that was on paper. And I think it always should have been on paper, and it wasn't practical to pursue a real life version of Epcot because it was just so unobtainable and it was just so costly to do.
Epcot isn't just an anything, it's everything and more. A great deal more than anything the world has seen before. The perfect planned community, the splendorific sprawl. And Epcot Center is the heart of it all.
So I assume when you say Epcot in that context, you're talking about the park itself, not the Disney World, not Disney World as Epcot. Because actually, if you go to Disney, they still refer, in some places, they refer to Disney World as Epcot. So it can be confusing because
Epcot Center is located in the center of Epcot. And Epcot Center is made up of 2 parts, which is Future World and the World Showcase. It's 2.5 miles from the Magic Kingdom, which is also part of Epcot, which is what the entire 27,000-acre area known as the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, or Epcot, or Walt Disney World is called. Just so there's no confusion.
But anyway, to your point, how did it go from paper to reality, right? That's kind of the question. So when Disney died, they had already bought the land in Florida. So the corporation, from what I could tell, they almost wanted to bail like completely on the project and not do anything with it. But Walt's brother Roy really pushed for the theme park to be built. That was phase 1. That was always phase 1, aka what we know today as the Magic Kingdom. So he pushed to have the theme park built and got it built. And even then, after like in the middle of building, like the investors and everything, nobody was convinced that this would work because they're building it in the middle of nowhere in Florida. Who's going to go to this? Everybody wants to go to the beaches. They're in Central Florida. But the theme park was a pretty good success. I mean, this is the first time that you go from this tiny little park in California to now this massive resort, in Orlando. And it was such a big success. I think they had over 1 million people even in the first year, which is pretty good. But then they started to talk about, okay, what else are we going to do? Because we have this massive amount of land. At that point, the whole city aspect went awry. Even though they did, to your point, they established their own government system, the Reedy Creek government, to run and fund like the public roads, which are not funded by Disney, but a tax on Orlando, by the way. But it's a private government set up to be on Disney property. So they at least have the government aspect of this all arranged. And yes, Disney's pulling the strings behind the government, at least on Disney property. But when the whole idea of Epcot, the city came up, it's like, that's just, it just, okay, now you're starting to enter the mid-70s, right? And it's no longer viable to do something like that. And so for whatever reason, the powers that be said, okay, let's dumb it down to a theme park.
I know a lot of you out there are saying, who is that guy? What is whoever he is doing wherever he is? Well, I'm Michael Landon, and I'm at Orlando, Florida, where Walt Disney World is located. This doesn't look like the Disney World you know? You're right. I'm standing at an incredible new project called Epcot Center. Now you're saying, what's that? Here's the spaceship Earth, where we'll board a time machine and journey through thousands of years of history into tomorrow. And right over there, Communicore, the center of it all, where we'll see and touch the future. And this will be New Horizons, 21st century living on the land, under the sea, and in outer space. This is the journey into imagination, where you'll star in a special effects video demonstration and explore the frontiers of your own mind. And here, the world of motion. Sit back, relax, and have fun riding through a moving experience. The land, a floating excursion through the incredible bounty of tomorrow's harvest. The universe of energy, 80,000 solar cells on this roof will enable us to ride on sunshine. And this will be the World Showcase, a community of nations brought together by the American adventure. And on October 1st, 1982, after more than 2 decades of planning and 2 years of construction, the gates will open on that dream.
Disney always liked World's Fairs, and you go back to like the 64 World's Fair in New York, where things like the Carousel of Progress came from, as well as It's a Small World. That was all designed for the World's Fair and then brought to Disneyland afterwards. So he always liked the World's Fairs and liked getting the whole, oh, let's get all the countries together, set up pavilions and blah, 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 blah. But he didn't like how it was only for like a year or two. He wanted a permanent World's Fair. And that was actually in the plans for the city of Epcot, was to have a permanent World's Fair there where other countries can come and showcase their own stuff and blah, 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 blah. But it would be a permanent one. It wouldn't be a temporary World's Fair. So they combined the World's Fair aspect of it with the City of the Future aspect of it, smash it together, and that's what you get in Epcot. Now, when this thing premiered in 81, the future side, aka Future World, was actually really cool. I don't know if you've ever gone back and watched like old videos of what Epcot was, but it was super cool for the time. Like, you got to think, you could picture yourself as a kid in 1981 going to this futuristic city. They had all the computers on display. You know where like Mouse Gear is and Coca-Cola Pavilion, like those buildings? Those were all housed, those computers filled that area and they ran the park. So they ran all the lights, they ran all the rides, and they were on display for you to go see. And, you know, this is the 80s, so they were functional. They were actual functional.
What you're seeing is the electronic heart of Epcot Center. In this one room are all the computers that run and monitor every show in Future World and World Showcase. Over here is our animation console. All of our audio animatronic performers are programmed with these. Well, that's how they learn their script. All across Epcot Center, backstage computers are our electronic stagehands. Using a variety of sensors, they keep a constant eye on each and every performance. What they see is then processed into data and input directly here to Central. This information is then assembled into a continuous status report by MAX, Monitoring and Control System. MAX operates day and night, alerting the technician here immediately of any problems. All this helps keep our shows rolling. This is our Central Energy Control Room, where computers constantly monitor all of our utility requirements and help to efficiently operate all of our temperature control, lighting, and other energy systems.
Again, they were showcasing what the possibility of all this technology. And they even had little areas where companies did come in and showcase their stuff. I think Apple Computer had some kiosks set up where you can go try out their computers. You know, Kodak had the same thing where they could try out the brand new cameras and stuff like that. Like, they actually put that aspect of it on display, and it was almost like back then it was almost like a museum, or like you would go to, you know, the Smithsonian or something, and there would be like, it was a display of museum pieces and exhibits of all this new technology that's coming out.
Future World is a celebration of the highest achievements, a vast insight into progress and new discoveries. Fast forward to the immediate future, an amazing showcase of what's new and what's to come. This is where you can see, touch, and play with all the inventions that will soon change your life.
Starting around the 90s, people began to realize really fast that all that stuff was becoming really dated, right? I mean, technology by the time the 80s and 90s hit was evolving so fast, I guess they just didn't want to keep up or something. And they kind of shoved aside the whole, let's showcase products of the future to the back burner, and let's develop this to a full-fledged theme park, because that's where the money is, I guess. I don't know. They kind of dumbed it down and made it all touristy. But the whole aspect of the museum/exhibit side kind of went out the wayside there. And that's what you get in Epcot today, is this hodgepodge of you got the World Showcase, which was supposed to be the permanent World's Fair, and then you have Future World, which isn't really futuristic anymore. It was like a vision of the future in the 80s, but it's no longer relevant, and now it's like a theme park, and it's kind of a mess, if you ask me, of what it became. But at its core, it would sounded cool. It was just never really practical to really implement. Because that's why I said it in the beginning. It was always doomed to fail, because no matter what you showcase, you have to replace it relatively soon because it's already obsolete. Yeah. Well, I think what happened there was Disney happened. I mean, again, they went from this pretty cool idea to watering it down to this fake, touristy, pseudo-real thing that is a theme park. And like, even if you think of the countries that are there, half of them are owned by Disney. The other half are actually ran and owned by the countries they come from. So you think of, like, I want to say Morocco, Germany, China. Those are all owned by those countries, and the workers there are supplied by those countries. But you think of things like Mexico, the UK, and France. Those are all owned by Disney, and that's why if you look at the countries, Germany, Italy, they tend to be a little bit more authentic than the watered down version of Mexico, UK, and France. Yeah. And actually, I don't know if you saw, but they recently announced 2 additional countries that are coming to Epcot. But we've heard this before, because if you look up an old commercial, they said Switzerland was coming as well as the USSR, which obviously never happened.
Epcot Center's World Showcase will soon welcome 2 new countries. The one most requested, the Soviet Union, and Switzerland, with its thrilling Matterhorn mountain bobsled ride.
I so wish they would have put in the USSR. 11. Soon to be 13, because they're going to add Spain and Brazil, I heard. That's the unofficial rumor that should be announced soon. I think it will be Disney, because there's like, I heard they're doing Spain because there's like a new Disney movie that's coming out that's going to be a lot like Frozen, but it takes place in Spain. So they're going to ride that revenue wave and put in a new country to mimic that movie. And then I don't know why Brazil, probably because they just had a few movies that were made there as well. So again, it all ties back to this revenue thing, that how can we coerce people to come to this? Because nothing's original anymore. Everything's based off the movies. And what was the last original ride at Disney World? Not just Epcot, but anywhere. Everything is always tied back to a marketing campaign. Yeah, I mean, I think he did. I think he tried to bite up more than he could chew. And again, when you go back, and I don't know if you saw any articles about like the investors he tried to coerce into funding Epcot, because obviously the Disney Corporation did not have the funds to build an entire city.
Well, a project like this is so vast in scope that no one company alone can make it a reality. But if we can bring together the technical know-how of American industry and the creative imagination of the Disney organization, I'm confident we can create right here in Disney World a showcase to the world of the American free enterprise system.
I mean, you're talking about billions of dollars in the 60s. So, nobody was getting on his side of this being practical, because the companies, they didn't see where the return was. How are they going to make money off of this? There was no upside for the companies. It was, let's build this cool city of the future, blah, blah, blah. But where's the return on investment for these corporations? There wasn't any. Yeah, because other people around their circle saw where the real revenue was and migrated towards that. Right. And I think they're still trying to cling on to the past and not evolve for the future. And again, like, you go back to the economics of it. What's, to the average American, what sounds better, going to a museum or going to a roller coaster theme park? Roller coaster theme park is going to get picked by 9 out of 10 kids every time, right?
It's fun for the kids. They have a great time, and they learn so much, and so do we. As we're leaving the park, it starts to sink in, like how much you've absorbed during the day. It's wonderful. They come up with stuff weeks down the road that they've learned here.
It's one of the best things I've ever been to. It's better than science museums all over the country, and I've been to a bunch of them, and this is really great. I've come back here a couple times, and this is really my favorite park.
But at the heart of what Epcot is, what is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be a showcase of, currently, showcase of other cultures and showcase of other technology. And that just is completely lost on the average American. And what does the average American want? They want their turkey legs and the roller coasters. And that's what you get at Epcot, or that's what it's in this hybrid transition, again, clinging from the past and going to the future, of evolving into a full-fledged theme park. But I don't think you can ever get there because they're just so drained or held back by that past of what Epcot was supposed to be. Yep. Yes. And everyone was still in their 90s garb, and it was very dated. Very, very dated. Yeah. Modern theme parks at least have a theme. I mean, you look at Hollywood Studios, it's all about making movies. You look at Animal Kingdom, it's all about, animals. You look at Magic Kingdom, it has its themed lands. Future World at Epcot is just this weird, again, hodgepodge of, you got this like land pavilion, and then you got the seas, then you got the test track side. Like, there's no theme there. They almost have to redo the entire whatever they're doing, because the whole concept of Future World is long gone. That died out in the 80s, and it doesn't seem to be coming back. So you almost do need a massive revamp of whatever you're doing there, because right now it's not working. What do you turn Future World into? That's a good one. That's a really good one. You almost it needs more rides. It desperately needs more rides, because right now what you have Test Track, sure, and you have Mission Space, but look at the other ones. They're all slow moving, like the Figment ride, you got the Ball, you got the Nemo ride. It needs more e-tickets like Test Track for it to really have a hope. And even though Test Track isn't that great, you see what I'm getting at. It needs an Everest, or it needs a Toy Story. Something more than what's currently there, because, following Ellen DeGeneres and Bill Nye the Science Guy around for 45 minutes isn't exactly, on everybody's front and center list of things to do. So, it desperately is in need of more e-tickets, which are the big fancy rides that, a lot of the other parks have. But what the overall theme is, I don't know, because it's so fragmented right now. It's hard to string things together of what's already there. Maybe you just turn that into, because you have the World Showcase, which showcases different cultures of the world. Maybe Future World just becomes let's showcase Earth, because you got the land, you got the seas, you got the Ellen DeGeneres energy side of things. Just talk about Earth and turn it into like an environmentally thing, a sustainability park or something. Mm-hmm. They do still have that, but I don't know if you ever saw it. It's in the back now, and it's like one server room, kind of up front where the Ball is, but to the right, if you're leaving. I don't know if they took you on the tour when you first got hired in, but they took us there, and they're like, yeah, we used to have all the computers out in the open for people to see. Now it's just this boring old server room. Because you got to think, again, this was the 80s, so you need, computers were huge. Now you can run the whole theme park on a laptop if you wanted. So what are you going to showcase? A blinking light? Like I said, go back and look at old pictures and home movies from Epcot in the early 80s, and it's impressive. Again, putting yourself in the context that this is 1982, and you're walking around seeing these massive machines, you're seeing these animatronic robots, they show you how those move and all. It was super cool, and it would have been super cool back then. But once you start hitting the 90s, it just all becomes irrelevant, because computers just got so smaller and smaller and smaller. There's nothing to showcase anymore, because it's all on your desk. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Tomorrow came for Epcot after about a decade. Epcot will rise again.
This has been a presentation of Honey Sound Broadcasting, an affiliate of the Bilko Media Network.
I do want to say an epilogue, because Epcot, the city, does exist, aka Celebration, Florida, which is the town just south of I-4 where Disney World is, in how do I say this, in memory of Disney's Epcot, or in allusion to that dream of building a city. The Imagineers actually designed Celebration, and they designed the buildings, like the central commercial zone, they designed the streets, they designed a lot of that. They really took out the Disney-esque side of things, and they just went full-blown, let's design a city. Partnering with the local government, who was kind of funding the thing. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is a town designed by Disney Imagineers. It ain't Epcot, but it's the next best thing, I guess, in a realistic setting. So Epcot does exist, the city. It just isn't the grand plan that Walt wanted.